On the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly session, the Indian External Affairs Minister said that he views Russia as a major partner in many domains. S. Jaishankar met with Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, just hours before his address at the UN and later tweeted a summary.
A wide-ranging conversation with FM Sergei Lavrov at #UNGA77. Discussed our bilateral cooperation, exchanged views on Ukraine, G20 and UN reforms.
He shared more details in his exchange with the press corps.
We discussed a number of issues. Some part of my meeting was focused on our bilateral cooperation because Russia is a major partner in many domains. We spend some time on the bilateral side, where things are taking stock. A lot of it was he briefed me about various developments from the Russian perspective. I also shared with him what I picked up from some of the others. So that was a back-and-forth conversation. Russia is very much at the center of debate where G20 is concerned. And finally, we spoke about the UN reform.
Just an hour earlier, Lavrov explicitly mentioned support for India and Brazil to become permanent United Nations Security Council members.
We see the prospect of making the Security Council more democratic exclusively through broadening the representation of the countries from Africa, Asia, and Latin America. We note India and Brazil in particular as key international actors and worthy candidates for permanent membership within the Council, whilst at the same time unilaterally and mandatorily raising the profile of Africa.
Joe Biden, the President of the United States of America, had voiced his country's support for expanding the permanent and non-permanent membership of the UNSC.
The United States supports increasing the number of both permanent and non-permanent representatives of the Council. This includes permanent seats for those nations we have long supported and permanent seats for countries in Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean.
The USA has always backed India to become a permanent member. The United Kingdom and France have also supported India's becoming a permanent UNSC member. Only China opposes India's inclusion.
This year, many countries from around the world talked about India's positive contribution to the world. France appreciated Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's message to the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, that this is not the era for war. Mexico wanted Modi to negotiate peace between Russia and Ukraine. Guyana, Jamaica, and several African countries appreciated Indian help during the COVID-19 pandemic. In its immediate neighborhood, Bhutan and Nepal also called out India for its support during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Without mentioning their names, Jaishankar was critical of China for its dead diplomacy, Pakistan for its terror support, Turkey for its off-handed treatment of UN resolutions, and the West and Russia for the Ukraine war. Watch.
India is on the side of peace and will remain firmly there. We are on the side that respects the UN Charter and its founding principles. We are on the side that calls for dialogue and diplomacy as the only way out. We are on the side of those struggling to make ends meet, even as they stare at the escalating costs of food, of fuel, and fertilizers. It is therefore in our collective interest to work constructively, both within the United Nations and outside, in finding an early resolution to this conflict. The accumulation of debt in fragile economies is of particular concern. We believe that in such times, the international community must rise above narrow national agendas. Excellencies, the world, as we knew it, is poised for transformational changes. It has been impacted in recent times by a succession of shocks, each of them significant by itself. The COVID pandemic called into question the over-centralized nature of globalization and has led all of us to seek greater resilience and reliability of supply chains. The repercussions of the ongoing Ukraine conflict have further heightened economic stresses, especially on food and energy. Climate events have added to disruption that the world is already facing. We need to create a global architecture that responds to the new tech tools deployed against open, diverse, and pluralistic societies. Having borne the brunt of cross-border terrorism for decades, India firmly advocates a zero-tolerance approach. In our view, there is no justification for any act of terrorism regardless of motivation, and no rhetoric, however sanctimonious, can ever cover up bloodstains. The United Nations responds to terrorism by sanctioning its perpetrators. Those who politicize the UNSC 1267 sanctions regime, sometimes even to the extent of defending proclaimed terrorists, they do so at their own peril. Believe me, they advance neither their own interests nor indeed their reputation.
Most other countries talked about energy, food, and climate security as the main concerns of their respective populations.
If you like this content, please press the like button and share it with your family and friends. Please consider subscribing to this channel. It is free. Press the bell icon to receive notifications about new content.